the city was alive with movement. Cars honked, people hurried by, and the chatter of voices mixed with the distant sounds of construction. Amid all this rush, an elderly woman stood near the corner of a busy street, looking small and fragile. Her hair was thin and silver, and her clothes, though neat, seemed out of place among the younger, faster-moving crowd. She clutched a small handbag close to her chest as if holding it tightly could somehow protect her from the chaos around her. She took a shaky step forward, then another, and finally stopped. Her eyes scanned the crowd, darting from one person to another, hoping to find some friendly face, some sign that she belonged in this strange and loud world. But everyone was too busy. People hurried past, looking at their phones or talking loudly with friends, completely unaware of her presence. Some glanced at her briefly, curiosity flashing in their eyes, but none slowed down to ask if she needed help. The elderly woman let out a quiet sigh and took another step. She felt invisible, as if the world had forgotten her. She had lived a long life, full of experiences, successes, and struggles. She had once been in places where people listened, where people cared. But here now, in the middle of a bustling city, she felt like a shadow, drifting in a world that no longer had room for someone like her. She tried to remember how she had ended up here. She remembered leaving her home earlier that morning, wanting to take a short walk in the fresh air. But the streets had grown unfamiliar. Buildings seemed taller, louder, and the noise of the city was overwhelming. At some point, she realized she didn't know where she was. The streets twisted in ways she couldn't recall, and the faces around her were strangers. She felt a wave of panic rising, a feeling that she hadn't felt in years. She hesitated, unsure of what to do. She wanted to ask someone for directions, but fear held her back. Fear that people wouldn't care, fear that she would be ignored, fear that she might embarrass herself. And then she noticed it, the way people moved around her as if she wasn't there. A man in a suit brushed past her shoulder without a word. A woman with a stroller avoided her glance entirely. Even children, usually curious and kind, seemed preoccupied with their games and laughter. She took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. She reminded herself that she had faced challenges before and overcome them. She had managed businesses, made important decisions, and guided people through difficult times. She was strong, even if her body felt frail now. But strength, she realized, didn't stop loneliness from creeping in. It didn't stop fear from taking hold. And standing alone in the middle of a crowded street, she felt small and forgotten. The elderly woman decided to sit down on a nearby bench. It was worn and old with peeling paint, but it offered a moment of respite. She rested her hands on her knees and looked around. People passed in waves, sometimes talking, sometimes silent, always busy. No one noticed her. No one offered a smile or a helping hand. She closed her eyes for a moment, wishing that someone, anyone, would see her. Minutes passed, and still no one came. She tried to think of what she could do. Should she call someone? But her phone was in her bag, buried under other items. Even if she found it, who would answer? She felt a sense of helplessness she hadn't felt in years. Her heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the realization that the world had moved on without her. Just when she began to wonder if she would sit there forever. Feeling invisible, she heard footsteps approaching. They were slow at first, then faster, and then a gentle voice spoke.
"Excuse me, ma'am, are you okay?"
The tone was soft, sincere, and it made her open her eyes. A teenager stood in front of her, slightly out of breath, with kind eyes and a calm presence. He didn't look away when she looked at him. He didn't hurry past like everyone else had. Instead, he waited, giving her the space to answer. The elderly woman's lips trembled as she tried to speak, unsure if her voice would come out. Finally, she whispered, I'm lost." The teen nodded, understanding immediately. "It's okay. I can help you. Let's sit together for a moment." He offered her a hand, not in a rushed or awkward way, but with genuine care. She looked at it, hesitated for just a second, and then accepted. The warmth of his hand was comforting, something she hadn't felt in a long time. It was a small gesture, yet it felt monumental. As they sat together on the bench, the teen asked her gentle questions. Where she lived, where she had been walking, if she needed water or a place to rest. Each question was asked without judgment, without rush. She felt seen again, felt like a person rather than a ghost drifting through a city. The anxiety in her chest began to ease slightly, replaced by a sense of connection she hadn't expected. The crowd around them continued to move, but in that moment, It no longer mattered. She realized that even in a world that seemed indifferent, there were still people who cared. She didn't know this teenager, but he had chosen to stop and notice her. He had chosen to take the time to help a stranger, and that simple act of kindness meant more than anything else in the world at that moment. As they talked, the elderly woman began to share small details of her life. She spoke of her love for books, for quiet mornings with tea, and for walks in the park. She mentioned the challenges she had faced over the years and the lessons she had learned. The teen listened patiently, never interrupting, never judging. Each word she spoke seemed to lift a weight off her shoulders. She realized that sometimes the world was overwhelming, not because of its size, but because of its indifference. People rushing past, ignoring others in need, could make even the strongest person feel small. But then moments like this happened, moments when someone noticed, when someone cared, and the world suddenly felt a little less lonely. Time passed quickly. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting golden light across the streets. She hadn't noticed the hours go by. Caught up in the gentle conversation and the warmth of human connection, she felt a small smile form on her lips for the first time that day. Perhaps things were not as hopeless as they seemed. Perhaps there was still kindness to be found, even in the busiest streets of a bustling city. The teen offered to help her get somewhere safe. He suggested finding a taxi or calling someone she trusted. The elderly woman nodded, feeling gratitude that words could hardly express. She realized that it wasn't money or status that made someone kind, it was heart. And this young stranger had a heart full of kindness, the kind that could restore faith in humanity. As they rose from the bench, hand in hand, she felt a renewed sense of hope. She had faced uncertainty, fear, and isolation, but she had also found compassion in the most unexpected place. The city still bustled around them, still loud and busy, but she felt seen now. She felt valued. And that small, simple moment, being held by the hand, being guided by someone who cared, was enough to remind her that she was not invisible. And so, with the help of a kind-hearted teenager, the elderly woman took her first steps away from fear and loneliness, walking into a future that suddenly seemed brighter. The city had ignored her, but for the first time that day, someone had stopped to care. And in that care, she found a warmth that no amount of money or status could ever replace. After the teenager gently took her hand and helped her to the bench, the elderly woman finally began to feel a sense of calm. The city noise still surrounded them, car horns, chatter, and the distant rumble of buses, but for a moment, it felt like they were in their own small bubble, a quiet space where worry and panic didn't dominate. She looked at the teen carefully, taking in the calm and concern in his eyes. It was rare to find someone so young who genuinely cared about a stranger, and it stirred a warmth in her heart. "Thank you," she said softly, her voice trembling slightly. I don't know why, but I thought no one would stop." The teen shook his head gently. "You're not alone. I'm here now. We'll figure this out together." He smiled, not in a boastful way, but in a reassuring human way that made her feel safe. The woman tried to explain what had happened, though her words came slowly. "I went out for a short walk. I wanted to enjoy the sun, but I think I got confused. The streets all look different now. I can't remember the way back." She paused, swallowing hard as a wave of embarrassment passed over her. "I've lived here for many years. I never imagined I'd get lost like this." The teenager listened without interrupting. He could see the fear in her eyes, but also the pride in her voice. Pride that had built her life, shaped her experiences, and carried her through hard times. It reminded him that behind every person, no matter how frail or lost they may seem, there is a story, a life full of memories, struggles, and achievements. "Don't worry," he said finally. "We'll make sure you get somewhere safe. First, let's figure out where you need to go." She nodded, taking a deep breath to steady herself. She told him she lived in a large house not far from the city center, but the streets were confusing and she hadn't brought a map. The teenager suggested checking her handbag for a phone or any contact information. She reached inside carefully and pulled out a small leather bag. Inside, she found a phone, a wallet, and a few other items. He helped her open the phone and she explained that she could call someone to pick her up, but she hesitated. "I don't like asking for help," she admitted. "I've always done things on my own." The teen nodded, understanding. "It's okay. Today, it's not about doing things alone. Sometimes we all need someone to hold our hand even for a little while. His words made her smile faintly. It was such a simple idea, yet it felt profound in that moment. She realized that accepting help did not make her weak. It made her human. Together, they looked through her contacts. There were several names she could call, but none answered immediately. The teen suggested that perhaps walking together to a nearby cafe might be safer while they waited for someone to respond. She agreed, feeling grateful for his practical thinking. They stood up slowly, the teenager offering her arm for support. She took it, and as they started walking, she noticed how careful he was not to rush her, letting her set the pace. The streets of the city felt different now. They were still crowded, still noisy, but with the teen beside her, the elderly woman felt less exposed, less vulnerable. She noticed small things she hadn't seen before, the way sunlight bounced off glass windows, the smell of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery, the sound of children laughing as they played in a small park. For the first time that day, she felt connected to the world around her, rather than lost within it. As they walked, the teenager began a gentle conversation. He asked about her life, what she enjoyed, what made her happy. At first, she was hesitant to share, but his calm demeanor encouraged her. She spoke of her love for quiet mornings, for reading books, and for walks in gardens. She talked about her career and the hard decisions she had made along the way, never boasting, just stating facts. There was dignity in the way she spoke, a quiet strength that reminded the teenager that age brought wisdom and experience that could not be measured by wealth or status. In turn, he shared a little about himself, not in a way that demanded attention, but to build connection. He told her about school, about his love for basketball, and how he often helped his neighbors with small things. She listened attentively, impressed by his kindness and thoughtfulness. Even in his youth, he had a sense of empathy that seemed rare in the busy world around them. Hours passed as they walked slowly through the streets. The elderly woman began to relax, laughing quietly at small jokes the teenager made, and telling stories of her past adventures. She spoke of her travels, of the friends she had made, and the lessons she had learned. With every story, the teen's respect for her grew, not because she was wealthy or famous, but because of the strength, grace, and kindness she carried in her heart. Eventually, her phone rang. She answered quickly, relief flooding her face as she recognized the voice on the other end. It was someone she trusted, someone who could come and guide her home safely. She spoke briefly, giving her location and explaining that she had been lost. The teenager listened silently, standing nearby and offering his hand for support. When she hung up, she turned to him, eyes shining. "Thank you," she said again. "I don't know what I would have done without you. You were so kind, so patient. You could have ignored me like everyone else, but you didn't. You made me feel safe." The teen shrugged lightly, a modest smile on his face. "I just wanted to help. Anyone would have done the same, I guess." "No," she said firmly. "Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have held my hand or walked with me when I was scared. You didn't just help me. You reminded me that there are still good people in the world." As they waited for her ride, she took a moment to observe the teenager more closely. He had a quiet confidence, a humility that was rare, and a heart that radiated kindness. She realized that in that simple act of helping a stranger, he had shown courage and compassion in a world that often moved too fast to notice small acts of care. When the car finally arrived, she felt a mixture of relief and sadness. Relief because she was finally going home, but sadness because she had to leave the company of someone who had restored her faith in humanity. She turned to the teen, offering him a genuine smile. "I won't forget this," she said softly. "You've changed my day, my life in a small way that means a lot." The teen smiled back. "I'm glad I could help. Just remember, it's okay to ask for help sometimes. We all need it." She nodded, gripping his hand one last time before letting go. As she stepped into the car and it drove away, she looked back, feeling a warmth that had been missing all day. The streets of the city still moved around her, still crowded and loud, but she no longer felt invisible. She had been seen, and that made all the difference. The teenager watched the car disappear, feeling a quiet pride in what he had done. It wasn't about fame or recognition or reward. It was about kindness, about noticing someone who needed help and taking a moment to care. In that small, simple act, he had made a difference not just in her life but in his own. He realized that helping someone didn't take much, just attention, patience, and a willingness to care. As he walked home, the city around him felt a little brighter, a little warmer. He thought about the elderly woman, about her stories, her laughter, and her gratitude. He knew that one act of kindness could ripple outwards in ways no one could measure. And somewhere out there in her home, the woman would carry the memory of a stranger who had stopped to notice her, who had held her hand, and who had reminded her that she mattered. The afternoon had started with fear, confusion, and loneliness for the elderly woman. It ended with safety, warmth, and hope, all because a young teen had chosen to notice her when everyone else had ignored her. And in that, both of their lives were changed, even in ways they might never fully understand. As the elderly woman and the teenager sat on the bench waiting for her ride, the conversation between them slowly became deeper and more personal. At first, it had been about simple things, directions, phone numbers, and safety. But now, as the minutes passed, the elderly woman found herself opening up in ways she hadn't in a long time. There was something in the teenager's presence that made her feel safe, that made it easy to speak without fear of judgment. She began talking about her life, her voice quiet but steady. She spoke of the early days when she had started working, of how she had struggled to build something meaningful. She shared memories of long nights filled with challenges, of moments when she had doubted herself, and of the victories that had come after hard work. The teen listened attentively, nodding occasionally, his eyes reflecting genuine interest. "I didn't expect to be sitting here, talking to a stranger of all people," she said softly, a faint smile on her lips. "And yet I feel lighter somehow, like I've shared something I've carried for a long time." The teen smiled back. "Sometimes talking to someone who listens is all we need. You've carried so much on your own, and that's a lot for anyone. It's okay to share it, even with someone you just met." She chuckled lightly, shaking her head. "You have a wise soul, young man. I can tell that already." The compliment made him laugh softly, though he quickly turned his attention back to her. They spoke about joy too, and the elderly woman's eyes lit up as she recounted moments of happiness. She spoke of travels she had taken, gardens she had visited, and books she had read that had changed the way she thought. She spoke of friendships that had shaped her life, and of family members who had always supported her. Each story painted a picture of a life rich with experience, a life full of both triumphs and struggles. The teenager listened without interruption, letting her words flow. He realized that this woman, so fragile and lost in the busy city, had lived a life filled with lessons and wisdom. Her kindness, her patience, and her resilience were qualities that money could never buy, and he understood that the act of helping her now was more than just guiding her safely. It was about honoring her life, respecting her story, and recognizing her humanity. "You know," she said after a pause, "it's easy to feel invisible in a world that moves so fast. People are always rushing, looking at their phones, worried about their own lives. And yet one small act of kindness, it can mean more than anything else." She looked at the teen with a warm gaze. "You held my hand, and in that simple gesture you reminded me that I still matter, that I am still seen." The teenager felt a warmth in his chest. He didn't want her to feel forgotten, not when she had shared so much and shown so much strength. "It doesn't take much to care for someone," he said quietly. "Sometimes it's just noticing them, giving them your time, and letting them know they're not alone. That's what matters most." For the first time that day, the elderly woman felt truly understood. She had been wandering lost, not just in the streets but in her own thoughts, feeling disconnected from the world around her. Now, sitting with the teenager, she felt a bridge forming between her past and her present, between fear and hope. It was remarkable how a single act of empathy could create such a profound impact. They began talking about their dreams and hopes. She asked the teen about his future, his plans, and the things he wished to achieve. He told her about school, about the challenges he faced, and about the small ways he hoped to make the world a better place. She listened carefully, offering encouragement and gentle advice. Her words were not patronizing, but full of wisdom and experience. She reminded him that courage wasn't always about grand actions. It was often about doing the right thing in small ways, day by day. "You have a good heart," she said. "The world needs more people like you. Don't let it harden you or make you believe that kindness isn't enough." "It always is," he smiled, feeling proud but also humbled. He had only helped her because it felt right, not because he expected praise. Yet hearing her words made him realize that even small gestures could ripple outward, touching lives in ways that could last much longer than anyone imagined. As they continued to talk, the elderly woman shared more personal reflections. She admitted moments of loneliness, times when she had felt isolated despite being surrounded by people. She spoke of mistakes she had made, of regrets she carried, and of lessons she wished she could pass on. The teenager listened with quiet patience, never interrupting, letting her voice fill the space between them. "I often think about how little time we have," she said softly, staring at the ground. "And yet we spend so much of it worrying, rushing, or ignoring each other. It's strange how easily we forget to care." The teen nodded. "We get caught up in life, that's true. But today we're proving that even small acts can make a difference. You're proof of that too, sharing your story, trusting me. It matters." For a moment they sat in silence, letting the words settle. The elderly woman felt a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She realized that this encounter, simple as it seemed, had restored something in her, a belief in human goodness, a reminder that kindness existed even in the busiest, most indifferent places. She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small notebook. She handed it to the teen, smiling. "I don't have much, but I like to write. I thought you might enjoy reading a little of it. It's just thoughts. Reflections on life, really." He accepted the notebook with care, flipping through the pages and reading snippets. He could see her experiences, her wisdom, and her gentle humor woven into the words. It was like peeking into her heart, and he felt honored that she had shared it with him. "You have a gift," he said quietly. "Your words. They're beautiful. They make people think and maybe even feel a little lighter." She smiled, touched by his sincerity. "Thank you. It feels good to be heard. That's what matters most, isn't it? To be heard and understood." As the afternoon faded into evening, the conversation shifted to lighter topics. They spoke of favorite foods, of music that brought joy, and of small pleasures that made life meaningful. The laughter that emerged was soft but genuine, a moment of warmth amidst the chaos of the city streets. The elderly woman felt a sense of companionship she hadn't realized she had been missing. Finally, she glanced at her phone, which had been quiet for some time. Her ride was approaching. The elderly woman felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. Relief that she would soon be safely home, but gratitude for the unexpected friendship she had found in the middle of her day of uncertainty. "I can't thank you enough," she said, her eyes glistening. "You've done more than guide me today. You've reminded me that there's still goodness in the world, that people still care." The teen smiled, a gentle humility in his expression. "You don't need to thank me. I just did what anyone should do. But I'm glad I could help. That's enough for me." She reached for his hand one last time, squeezing it softly. "You're a rare young man. Remember that. Your kindness will take you far, even if you don't realize it yet." He felt a quiet pride, not from praise, but from knowing that his small act had made a difference. It wasn't about reward, it was about connection, about human empathy, and about showing that even in a world that often seemed rushed and indifferent, one person could change another person's day, maybe even their life. As her ride arrived and she prepared to leave, she paused and looked back at him, a smile that radiated warmth and gratitude on her face. "Goodbye, young man. Take care of yourself. And remember, never underestimate the power of your heart." The teenager watched as she stepped into the car, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Today had started as just another busy afternoon, but it had turned into something far more meaningful. He had offered a hand, shared a conversation, and created a moment of trust and connection that neither of them would forget. As the car drove away, the city lights began to twinkle, reflecting off the pavement and the buildings around him. He felt a sense of hope, knowing that moments like this were possible. That even in a world full of rush and noise, a single act of kindness could restore faith, create connection, and remind someone that they mattered. And somewhere in her home, as she settled in for the evening, the elderly woman carried with her the memory of a young teenager who had stopped, noticed her, and held her hand when she felt lost and invisible. That small gesture had become monumental in its impact, a reminder that human connection, empathy, and care were timeless, precious, and powerful. After their long conversation on the bench, the elderly woman and the teenager began to move again, walking slowly toward a safer place while they waited for her ride. She leaned lightly on his arm, feeling secure and cared for. The city around them continued to move at its usual hectic pace, but with each step the elderly woman felt calmer, lighter, and strangely grateful for the company of someone she had just met. As they walked, the woman started speaking again, her voice thoughtful and quiet. "I suppose it's strange how life works," she said. "One moment you feel completely lost, invisible, and the next, someone appears who reminds you that kindness still exists. It's a strange kind of magic, isn't it?" The teenager smiled softly. "It's not magic. It's just people noticing each other, caring for each other. That's all it takes sometimes." She looked at him with a mix of admiration and surprise. "You're wise beyond your years. I can see it in your eyes, in the way you listen. It's rare to find that in people these days." He shrugged, feeling a little embarrassed by the compliment. "I just try to do what feels right. I guess that's all anyone can do." As they continued walking, she suddenly stopped and looked at him with a small, almost mischievous smile. "There's something I should tell you," she said softly. "Something that might surprise you." The teenager tilted his head, curious. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, her eyes glimmering with emotion. I'm not just an ordinary person. I have resources, wealth, things most people only dream about. I've been successful in ways that are hard to imagine. But all of that, it doesn't matter in moments like this. What matters is what you've done, helping me when no one else would." The teenager stopped in his tracks, feeling a mix of shock and disbelief. "Wait, you mean you're rich?" he asked carefully, unsure how to respond. "Yes," she said, her voice gentle. "I have been fortunate in my life in ways that are visible and material. But you've reminded me that no amount of money can replace human connection. You didn't care about who I am or what I have. You just cared that I needed help, and that matters more than anything else in my life right now." The teenager felt a strange mix of emotions. He had expected gratitude, of course, but not this. Not the revelation that the woman he had been helping was someone so extraordinary, and yet in that moment it didn't change how he felt about what he had done. "I didn't help you because of money," he said firmly. "I helped because it was the right thing to do. That's all that mattered to me." She smiled, clearly moved by his words. "And that is why this moment is so special. Because you didn't see me as someone famous or rich or untouchable. You saw me as a person who needed help, and that is more valuable than anything I could ever have." For a few minutes they walked in silence, letting the weight of the revelation sink in. The city continued to hum around them, but in their bubble there was a sense of calm and understanding. The elderly woman realized that despite all her accomplishments and wealth, what she had experienced that day, the genuine care, the patience, the human kindness, was something money could never buy. "I've met many people in my life," she continued quietly, "but very few have shown the simple courage to step forward and offer help when it was needed. You've done that today, and I want you to know that your act has touched me deeply." The teenager felt a warmth in his chest that was hard to describe. He had never thought that helping someone could feel so significant, so meaningful. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about connection, empathy, and the knowledge that he had made a difference in someone's life. They reached a small cafe nearby, a quiet place away from the busy streets. The woman suggested they sit for a few minutes while they waited for her ride. She ordered some tea and the teenager got water for himself. As they sat down, she looked at him thoughtfully. "You know," she said, "I've been reminded today that no matter how old we get, no matter how much we achieve, we all need someone to care. We all need someone to notice us, to see us as human beings first. You've reminded me of that, and for that I am grateful." The teenager smiled, feeling both humble and proud. "I'm glad I could help. That's really all I wanted, to make sure you were okay." She nodded. "And you did more than that. You reminded me of the power of kindness, and that's something I won't forget." A few minutes later, a sleek car pulled up outside the cafe. The elderly woman stood, smoothing her clothes and looking at the teenager with gratitude. "This is my ride," she said softly. "I suppose it's time to go home." The teenager felt a pang of sadness. He had grown attached to this moment, to the connection they had formed. But he knew that her safety and comfort were what mattered most. He offered his hand to help her to the car, and she took it gratefully. As she stepped inside, she turned to him one last time. "Thank you," she said, her eyes shining. "I will never forget this day. You've reminded me that the world can still be a place of kindness. that even small acts can make a big difference. You have a heart that matters, and I hope you never forget that. The teenager nodded, feeling a quiet pride in what he had done. I won't, he said. And I hope you remember that your story matters too. You've inspired me today more than you know. She smiled, touched by his words. Perhaps one day we will meet again. But even if we don't, know that your kindness has left a mark. And that mark, it's worth more than anything else in this world. The car drove away slowly, and the teenager watched it disappear into the distance. For a moment he felt a sense of emptiness, but it was quickly replaced by a profound sense of fulfillment. He had helped someone who was lost, scared, and invisible to the world. And in doing so, he had witnessed the power of genuine human connection. As he walked back through the city streets, he thought about what had happened. He realized that kindness, empathy, and the willingness to help others could create ripples far beyond what anyone could imagine. That single act of holding a hand, walking alongside someone in need, and listening with patience and care had not only changed the woman's day, it had changed both of their lives. He passed by people who were still rushing, still absorbed in their own worlds, and he felt a quiet hope that perhaps one day others would notice too. Perhaps they would understand that even the smallest acts of compassion could make a difference in someone's life. And he knew that he would carry this lesson with him forever. At home that evening, the elderly woman settled into her favorite chair, reflecting on the day's events. She had faced fear, confusion, and loneliness, but she had also experienced warmth, care, and genuine connection. The teenager's act of kindness had reminded her that no matter how much one achieved or how much wealth one possessed, the most meaningful moments in life came from human connection. She smiled, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. Life had given her many gifts, but this day, this encounter with a kind, compassionate teenager, was a gift of a different kind. It was a gift that reminded her of the value of empathy, the importance of noticing others, and the enduring power of kindness. And somewhere, out in the city, the teenager thought about her too. He thought about the stories she had shared, the wisdom she had imparted, and the gentle gratitude in her eyes. He realized that even in a world that often seemed rushed and uncaring, there were moments like this that restored faith, moments that reminded people that kindness mattered, and moments that would be remembered long after the day was over. The elderly woman had returned safely home, and yet the impact of that day would linger, not in the wealth she possessed, but in the simple, profound truth that a single act of human care could change everything. And for the teenager, the memory of holding her hand, listening to her stories, and offering comfort would remain a lesson in compassion that he would carry with him for the rest of his life. The next morning, the teenager woke up with a quiet sense of purpose. The events of the previous day still lingered in his mind. The way the elderly woman had looked when he first saw her, the warmth of her hand in his, the conversations they had shared. He thought about how small actions like offering help or listening with care could create a ripple that went far beyond what anyone could imagine. He went about his day as usual, walking to school and greeting neighbors along the way. Yet everything felt a little different. The world seemed a little smaller, a little warmer, and a little more alive. He found himself noticing things he hadn't before. The smile of a shopkeeper, the laughter of children, the small acts of kindness people showed each other without realizing it. Meanwhile, back in her home, the elderly woman reflected on the day with a mixture of gratitude and wonder. She had experienced fear and confusion, yet she had also experienced human kindness in its purest form. The teenager who had helped her did not care about her wealth or status. He had simply seen a person in need and acted with compassion. She realized that moments like these were rare, precious, and life-changing. She decided that she wanted to do something meaningful for him, not as a reward, but as a way to honor the kindness he had shown. She thought about his stories, his dreams, and his dedication to helping others, even when it required little more than patience and attention. She wanted to ensure that his future would be brighter, that his potential would be supported, and that he would continue to bring good into the world. A few days later, she arranged to meet him at a quiet cafe near his school. When he arrived, he was surprised to see her there so soon. She greeted him with a warm smile, her eyes shining with gratitude and admiration. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "I wanted to see you again. Not just to thank you, but to offer a little support for your future. You've shown me what true kindness looks like, and I believe you deserve encouragement in return." The teenager listened carefully, a mixture of humility and curiosity on his face. He had never expected anything in return for helping her. He had acted out of compassion simply because it felt right. But as she spoke, he realized that this was not a reward in the usual sense. It was an opportunity, a gesture meant to help him grow and achieve his potential. "I've arranged something for you," she said, handing him a small envelope. "It's not a gift in the way people usually think of money or things. It's a chance, an opportunity to pursue your dreams, to learn, and to continue helping others as you have helped me." He opened the envelope carefully and found documents that explained a scholarship for school, as well as support for future education and personal development. He was stunned. He had never imagined that such a gesture could come from someone he barely knew, someone he had helped without expecting anything in return. "Why are you doing this?" he asked softly, overwhelmed. "I didn't help you for this. I wanted to make sure you were safe." She smiled, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "And that is exactly why I am doing this. You acted from the heart without thinking about recognition, reward, or status. That kind of integrity and kindness is rare, and it should be nurtured, encouraged, and supported. You reminded me that even in a busy, uncaring world, there are people who act with humanity first." For the first time in his life, the teenager felt truly recognized, not for grades, achievements, or accomplishments, but for the simple goodness of his heart. He realized that this encounter had not only changed the woman's day, but had created a lasting impact on both of their lives. Over the next few weeks, their bond grew stronger. She checked in on him occasionally, offering guidance, encouragement, and advice. He shared his experiences and dreams, and she listened attentively, offering wisdom and support. Their connection became a source of inspiration for both of them, a reminder that compassion, empathy, and genuine care could bridge generations and social divides. Word of their story began to spread quietly through the community. People learned about the teenager who had helped a lost elderly woman, unaware that she was a billionaire. They admired his courage, his patience, and his ability to see a person rather than status. The story inspired others to look around, notice those in need, and offer help without expecting recognition or reward. The elderly woman, too, found herself reflecting deeply on her own life. She realized that her wealth and accomplishments, while meaningful in some ways, had never provided the kind of fulfillment that a simple act of kindness could. Helping others, caring for people, and nurturing human connection were the true measures of a meaningful life. She felt grateful that in a world often preoccupied with money and status, she had experienced something far more valuable: genuine human empathy. The teenager, inspired by the experience, began to take on small acts of kindness in his own community. He helped elderly neighbors with errands, tutored younger students, and offered support wherever he could. Each act, no matter how small, reminded him of the impact a single gesture could have on someone's life. He carried the lesson of the elderly woman with him, understanding that kindness was not a choice for the famous or the wealthy. It was a choice for everyone, every day. Months later, the teenager looked back on the day he had first helped the elderly woman and realized how much it had shaped him. It had taught him patience, empathy, and the power of connection. It had shown him that small actions could create enormous ripples in the lives of others. Most importantly, it had reminded him that kindness was not just an act. It was a reflection of character, of the kind of person he wanted to be.